Elevator pitch is about me inspiring you about my ideas.
What is the biggest deal breaker?
Hi, my name is Parandeh and I've got a very good startup. We're going to be doing this and I need 1 million and I'll give you 100 million euro back.
How many seconds does it take for you to lose it?
One, we don't remember data. We remember stories. If we connect them within a story, it becomes memorable. Most of the startup founders eluded with the idea that they're going to raise money very fast, very easily. Because we don't reach these objectives, we fail to look after ourselves and depression hits. I, for one, put my hand up. 2012 to 14 were possibly one of the hardest years I had to go through. I admit I was unable to keep a cool head.
What is that one thing AI will never replace in entrepreneurship?
Or in anyone, your soul.
Welcome to the new episode of Roches Talks. In our discussion, we will take a closer look at the realities of building a startup, from crafting a solid business idea to navigating the different challenges of going against the mainstream. Why do most entrepreneurs fail? How do you disrupt an industry when the odds are just stacked against you? This episode will be packed with raw insights, success stories, and heart-hitting truth. My name is Dr. Christina Sorag, and I'm an assistant professor at Les Roches Marbella with a background of economics and data analytics. I'm very excited to host this episode today because we're welcoming now Ali Parandeh, communication and startup coach here in Marbella, and he's also referred to as the startup whisperer. Welcome to the studio, Ali. I'm really happy that you're here with us today. Ali is a true entrepreneur at heart with over 30 years of experience in the world of business and technology. He started programming at just the age of 14, and he has been testing and launching different business ideas ever since. With a background in biotechnology and genetic engineering, Ali eventually found his passion in IT and, most importantly, startups, founding, selling, and advising numerous business ideas. After selling his last company, in 2018, Mr. Parandeh dedicated his time to mentoring entrepreneurs. He's also an award-winning public speaker and the author of 5 books, currently working on his latest passion and vision, Ingredients for a Successful Startup. As former president of the Achievers Toastmaster Club in Marbella, he was able to grow the community of public speakers inspiring and helping young and experienced entrepreneurs. In 2023, Ali was a remarkable TEDx organizer, turning this event into one of the brightest highlights of Marbella's social life. Welcome one more time to the studio, Ali. How are you feeling today?
Good afternoon, Christina. Well, that was an amazing introduction. That sounds much more amazing than I am. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Yeah, it lifts me up.
I'm really happy. We need that energy for sure. I must admit something, Ali. When I first met you several years ago, I thought to myself, wow, this man just literally knows almost everything about startups and entrepreneurs. And I was wondering that he was either a Marvel superhero or a liar.
A liar.
So which one is it?
A liar. If anybody tells you they know everything, then they're a liar.
I see. So the first piece of advice is already coming up. That's really good to know. There is a quote that really resonates with this entire approach. Being an entrepreneur is like playing the lottery, except instead of buying a ticket, you sell your soul and max out your credit card, correct?
Absolutely. If you don't really max out that credit card, you're not an entrepreneur. I've certainly burnt a few of those.
Can you share with us maybe one of the most compelling reasons why you keep operating as an entrepreneur despite all the challenges and difficulties?
Okay, so you mentioned being an entrepreneur is like playing the lottery, and that's actually one of the first questions I always ask entrepreneurs. Every entrepreneur I meet, 2 questions I ask are, what would you do if tomorrow you would win the lottery?
Interesting.
And ask yourself, what would you do if tomorrow you would win the lottery? And the answer to that is very interesting, because those entrepreneurs who really, really love what they're doing, they naturally would respond, well, I would invest the money in this project and I would take it forward and I would make it happen. And those who are in it for money will say, well, I'll retire, I'll buy a house, I'll invest in other companies. I'm like, God, a few minutes ago, you were asking for a couple of million to get this project going and you were promising a couple of 100 millions in return. And now I've given you €1 million of the lottery.
They're already pensioners.
And you've already left it. So that's the first question I ask. And the next question I ask is, what would you do if you never, ever received any investment?
Wow.
And that, again, defines those people who are truly passionate about what they do and who truly believe in their idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you really believe in it, money or no money, investment or no investment, you'll go for it.
Yeah. Can you share maybe any percentage? Pensioners versus visionaries.
Of course, the percentage is low. The percentage is low. But there is one thing you asked me, and I did bring with me as I'm writing this book. I've been reading Financial Times since 2000, 1999, 2000.
Wow.
And this is just like single pages from Financial Times since I would say probably 2010, 2011 or 12, somewhere around there. Every week I come across at least one or two articles of interviews with successful people who in one way or another say somebody had told them this won't be possible, but they went ahead and did it, or they just followed their passion. They really believed in what they wanted to do. They loved what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the ones who were successful. And they're the ones who made it into Financial Times to get an interview or to be interviewed or have made it to the top of the news.
It's so good to see that you brought all these, physical copies of a newspaper, because these days everyone is just reading digital, and it has such a charm to see people who are actually taking their time. They hold a physical piece of newspaper. They dive into the news and the realities out there. It just makes me feel so good, that the world is not going to the dogs that much.
Yeah. I'm a paper guy.
Well, I'm going to continue with another interesting question, because we're just, resonating with startups and entrepreneurship. And I brought another quote that I just found very exciting. The fastest way to kill your startup is to build something nobody wants. The second fastest way is to run out of money. So according to some statistics, the failure rate for the newly created startups is around 90%. It doesn't matter what source I open, it's always around 90%, which is shocking. It's already a big red flag for people who have no idea what to do. And we must admit that it is a really, really big obstacle, especially when you think about young people who have no experience, nothing really to imagine. So if you have ever done some reading on this topic, and I'm sure you have, there are probably hundreds of explanations why the failure itself happens. Ali, what are your personal observations when it comes to the failure? Let's just forget about the official statistics and data. What do you think? What is the most frequent reason behind startup failure?
There are obviously a number of reasons there, and it's always a combination. I don't think it's always one. But if we ignore probably the first one, which is probably the major one, which you've mentioned, the product market fit. And the product market fit is when entrepreneurs build a product that may be used by just a few people or doesn't really meet the need of the mass market.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get past that one, you said the second one is running out of money.
Exactly.
To me, running out of money is not the problem. Running out of passion is the problem. Because money only pays you to eat, and you can eat in many ways and you can live in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I go back to a lot of these people who succeeded. Their stories are just inspirational, because some of these people lived under bridges. They ate absolutely nothing. One of them actually, he made his million by working out the absolute minimum ingredients he would need to survive on in order to succeed in another project. The other project failed, But through that project, he created a milkshake that
wow.
became a big seller.
It just makes me think of the Airbnb co-founders as well,
Exactly.
that they had a moment when they started to sell the cereals during the presidential campaign just to raise enough money for a little short runway for the next step when it comes to the business. So people are getting really creative, as I see.
Yeah. So if you really, really love what you do, you'll just do whatever it takes to make it. And money is not really the one that will help you. Venture capitals at times throw way too much money at it, and things actually get out of control. And that's probably in the next couple of questions what you will ask, and I will answer what happens in those cases.
You mentioned passion, and it's one of the most frequently used expressions and even values if I think about your social media activity or just presence. But I'm sure that you have met a couple of founders who are really trapped, by this passion, the founder's trap, when you just do not really see what's next, how to pivot. Do you think it's actually a thing that affects a lot of founders, that they see nothing and they're so driven by the idea?
Difficult question, Christina. Difficult question. I've read both sides, and Steve Jobs, he actually said bent reality, and he was going on about bending reality, and Jeff Bezos going on about building your business plan on a 7-year basis. And a lot of the venture capitals have actually written off many good ideas, and later on they have become successful ideas and successful startups. So difficult to say which one is the right one, because sometimes somebody is really hooked on something and they do make it happen, and sometimes they're hooked on something and they fail. And I would say the differentiation point is flexibility in understanding. There's the person who understands that they can pivot, but they don't pivot because of certain reasons. So they have their criterias for not pivoting.
Yeah.
And if those criterias are correct and they're checked continuously, I would agree with their not pivoting. But if they are fixed and will not accept any flexibility or any other ideas, then they're most likely going to fail.
Perfect. Makes sense to me. Well, after the failures, the other thing that you might have been also going through these days, that actually everyone claims to be a startup founder. How many times does it happen to you that you just read your LinkedIn, you just go through the feed, and everyone is either a coach or a startup founder? So tell me, is there a secret club where they are, cultivating those startup founders, where there is a free avocado toast, or is just LinkedIn running a promo for everyone who doesn't know what to do with their life? Apart from the joke, to me at least, looks like almost everyone has something to do with the startup. And at the end of the day, the majority of them, they have no idea what the startup is. They just use this expression and, it gets under a sort of a deflation. It loses its value. So what is this crazy hype these days around the startups and, entrepreneurship itself? No one wants to have a solid job anymore. Seriously.
Yeah, everybody wants to win the lottery, I think.
Uh-huh.
The craze about being in startups is because we see the Mark Zuckerbergs, we see the Jeff Bezos, and those are the top stories. And therefore, everybody wants a piece of it. But what they don't take into consideration is how long it took them to get there and the chances of getting there and the sacrifices you really, really have to make to get there.
Yeah.
And those are the number of things a lot of people don't take into consideration. So because of this craze, a lot of people jump on the bandwagon and they may do a first round of funding and a second or a third. But the minute the funding runs out, they also stop following their initial dream and they let go of it. And I think the biggest craze that I saw, which I really thought was funny, it's less now, but I would say about 10 years ago, it was very, very common. all the startup founders were CEOs.
Oh, really?
Oh my
That
God.
makes absolute sense.
All startup founders were CEOs. And I'm like, dude, you're a one-man band.
Shut up.
You're no different than I am.
I can't believe this.
You can't be the CEO. Managing director, you could be, but
Exactly.
CEO,
Mm-hmm.
and because the craze came from the labeling that venture capitals wanted, have a CEO, have a CTO, have a CFO, and all of those, and who's who, that CEO became very commonly used.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just crazy because you're not a chief executive
Exactly, the
officer
lack of
until...
knowledge. That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to say. That we try to put on some roles that are absolutely not there. And I was just also thinking that our brain is selective, and we remember the winners only. And as you said, all those businesses that failed, it just never goes through. And people forget that such important founders, Jack Ma, if you think about him, the Alibaba Group, he was rejected before in early career over 20 times when he was applying for standard jobs. And he just never gave up. And for me, a startup founder has to be such a person who just does not give up. Can we put this in a dictionary, please?
I like that. And another thing I would add, a startup founder is never going to be an employee.
Speaking out of experience.
I've applied for jobs as well because they've aligned with what I like to do and what I want to do. And because there were times that I thought, maybe I'll just go work for somebody for a short time.
Yeah.
And not worry about anything. And of course, I've always been rejected.
Wow. That sounds like real life. Let's continue with another aspect. According to an article recently published by the Forbes magazine, such factors as unpredictable job security, so there we go, high expectations, financial difficulties, and that constant fear of failure are truly pushing the limits of startup founders, especially if they belong to a certain age group. So behind the headlines of unicorns and tech disruptors, there is an often overlooked and growing challenge that we're not talking enough about, and that is the mental health of the startup founders. You, as a serial entrepreneur and a startup mentor, because I see what you're doing every day. You do your swimming sessions and rounds, and you're so honest if you have any difficulty. What is the dark side of being an entrepreneur?
There's a huge dark side because we all start with big hopes and big ideas. And of course, they don't materialize in the way that we had envisioned, in the space of time that we had envisioned. We do not see the obstacles, or we think the path is much simpler than the obstacles we're going to encounter. And when we reach those obstacles, I've always, mentioned the film Rocky.
Yeah.
Of course, it's my age, but it's like a boxing game.
Evergreen.
Once you start being an entrepreneur, you're like punch left, right, center, and you're on the floor. And you get up and you're left, right, center, and you're on the floor, and you're left, right, center, you're on the floor, and this continues. And you can only take it so much. Here's the point. And I remember again reading a very amazing couple of articles. One was Jeff Bezos saying in this time, during these times, the most important thing is to keep a cool head. This is why I go swimming. There we go. To keep a cool head. And to also remind myself that before I go in, I'm like, I can't do it. I've got my clothes on and it's warm inside. And to go into cold water is difficult. But once I go in, I'm in. I'm like, I did it. There is no I cannot do it.
So you start your day with the win.
Yeah, but it's also the mindset of getting rid of I cannot do it. It reminds you that yes, you can do it. It was just a difficult step. The second part of it is because we don't reach these objectives, and we start working more and more and harder and trying harder, we fail to look after ourselves and depression hits. I for one put my hand up. The 2012 to 14 were possibly one of the hardest years I had to go through. And I admit I was unable to keep a cool head. And I could have managed it better, but I had no support. I was a solopreneur. I had nobody to rely on, no mentors, no coaches. And therefore, it just piles in on you. And if you're unable to control it, you crumble. You crumble under the pressure. Luckily, I did manage to find a coach in 2014, and
But an actual coach,
an actual
not
coach.
a fake coach.
No, an actual coach, not a fake coach. And as you know, I'm an avid reader with, I think it was Joe Dispenza, the book Joe Dispenza, Changing the Habit of Who You Are. The coach and that book are the couple of things that helped me change my mindset. And I stopped working weekends. I thought, that's it. Weekends, I'm going to stop working. I go running. I look after myself. I play with my daughter. And I re-energize. And that is what actually allowed me to pull up again. Because I was under. And I thought, that's it. I've spent all my money. I've remortgaged the house. I've killed the other business. Or I've milked it so much that there's nothing left of it. And I thought, there's no way out. But the fact that I gave myself that tiny break, I went skiing with another friend who, and at that time, it was just like, I was really almost towards the end of my limits of being able to afford or not afford it. But with those things, I thought, I either think I can make it or I think I cannot make it. So I thought, I am going to make it. I'll give myself the break and I'll spend the little money to look after myself. And of course, by the end of it, I was a little bit more energized. So I had more energy on Monday to put back into the business.
That's
and
so
2014, I started, improving again the business, and it started growing. And by 2018, I sold it actually.
That's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared it, because everyone is just talking and commenting about employee well-being and how a workplace can actually, have a certain way on your mindset and your brain space, but not many people discuss the problem behind those who have no one else around. Because when you start a new venture, you're literally on your own, and 99% of the people do not believe you. They will reject you. They will make fun of you, and it's only you. It's only you who has to push yourself to the very end. Which brings me to the next question. There must be actually a secret recipe behind growth. So we just gravitate back to the startups. According to Paul Graham, he's one of my biggest inspirations from the Y Combinator. Whenever you hear anybody talk about growth hacks, just mentally translate it in your mind to bullshit. That's what he said. Do you think that most of the startup potion or the magic behind it is just beating about the bush, or what is the best way to kickstart that growth? What do you think?
Let's go back to the bullshit, because I receive request upon request on LinkedIn for connection, and they're all growth salespeople and will promise you 10 times, growth, and will promise you 100 leads per week, and will promise you 100,000 euros income per year. And they're the bullshit. And you can actually challenge them and pick them out, because going back to your coaching, actually, again, I was looking for a coach. And I do believe in having a good coach is very good. So between my wife and I, we were looking for going with another coach and signing up. And we came across this company, and they were really good, the guy, and the program was good. So I started questioning him, and this guy came on and he said, yeah, this is so good. This program is so good. It was so good. I actually made 180,000 euros. And I thought, really? Wow. And what are you doing sitting working for this guy?
Wow.
Because let's be honest, if you made 180,000 euros, you'd be churning out your own business and you'll be leaving anybody else. You wouldn't end up working for somebody else.
One of the best
selling their courses. So you can catch a lot of these coaches who pretend to be coach, never been there, never done it, and probably just learned from a couple of mistakes and decided, okay, they don't want to put in the hard work. So they'll just put in an easy work of this is how you can do it. I never managed it, but I think you might be able to do it this way.
Wow, that's incredible. And actually, I'm just so convinced that we need to develop a sort of a critical thinking and a social filter to really, really see the difference. If someone can truly offer you any value, or if it's trash, that they are trying to sell you, that's really, really upsetting. Um, as a professor dealing with students almost every single day, I'm convinced that one of the biggest issues that they're struggling with is speaking and communicating. So, can you actually share any insights on these topics? Because you're also coming from the world of public speaking, you have a lot of experience, and I have zero doubt that you share the same observations about it. But when it comes to startups, what is the biggest deal breaker during an elevator pitch? Can you share any outrageous examples, maybe?
Hi, my name is Ali Parandeh, and I've got a very good startup. We're going to be doing this, and I needed 1 million, and I'll give you 100 million euro back. This is what you get in many of the elevator pitches. It starts with, my name is, this is what we are, this is what we do, this is how much we need, and this is how much we're going to get back.
How many seconds does it take for you to lose it?
Usually like one, because it doesn't even go in. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think they need to cram in absolutely everything in that elevator pitch. And it really is part of bad advice from some startup accelerators, some pitching, let's say, gurus, that they tell them this is how you have to do it. And they do it. They're just copying because they have no better knowledge and they've never had any public speaking coaching or experience. I actually joined Toastmasters because I wanted to become a better speaker to do fundraising.
Have you succeeded?
I did.
Let's ask the audience.
But in the process, I actually fell in love. In my first Toastmasters session, I thought I was a good public speaker before going. And then I realized, gosh, I really know nothing about public speaking. And of course, I met Percy there, who I really look up to. And I still really admire him. And it's there that I actually changed also my passion partially. I developed a second passion maybe. And I combine these two passions now. So elevator pitch is about me inspiring you about my ideas. And at the moment, I'm working on a new project with another co-founder. And it's about water. Now, you and I know how little it has rained here. How if you've been to Ardales, you've seen that it's dry.
For sure.
It's down to 15%. Many of the areas I used to swim in, dry, completely dry. And the price of olive oil, it's gone up 40%. The same olive oil now is tagged. Mm-hmm. They sell them tagged in supermarkets because it's so expensive. Mm. We are looking at just harvesting the huge amount of the humidity that exists in the air to feed and convert it into water for the olive plants, the almond trees, the aloe veras that require a very small amount of water to survive and to give us the food that we need. Now, that is an elevator pitch to me.
Sounds
because
like
I've told you more or less what I do.
Yeah.
I've never told you what I want as in terms of money, but the problem is there. And I don't know whether you tell me whether you captured the idea and whether it inspired you for what I'm doing.
For sure. I can really relate to it.
Yeah. So it's about making sure that the other person relates to the problem, understands the problem, and sees a need and sees an opportunity. They need to connect to that opportunity, and you need to create that emotion for them.
So it's also about emotions, right? Because if you look into any approaches of economics, we're rational human beings, and whatever we do, it's driven by our greed, and we just want to maximize profit, to minimize costs. But at the end of the day, when you're pitching a business idea to investors, they are human beings as well. And the way you communicate, what kind of values and emotions you might bring out of them, does it actually influence their decision? What do you think?
It does. It does, because at the end of the day, I think it's on energy that's connecting. And I feel your energy, you feel my energy. If you're needy, I feel it. If all you want is the money, I feel it.
Yeah.
And even more, somebody who's been there and done it. If they've earned their money, they can see through you. They can see through problems, and they can see whether it's going to work or not. So unless they really connect to you, unless they really start believing in you, then they're not going to buy your message of, oh, this is a 1 billion euro market and we're going to capture 10% of it and we're 5 years exit and all of that. Those are all the BS, let's say.
For sure.
So what is it that would really interest them? Either you hit home with a problem that they have, or you inspire them that you're really truly passionate about what you're doing and you would do it regardless.
I love it. Passion and facts, that's the best combination. When my students in the data analytics class try to explain any findings, any observations, exactly what I see is that they can perfectly tell me what the data is saying, but they cannot create a story behind it. And more experts out there, they're trying to inspire others to see the story, to be actually a thinker, and to transmit that message with the raw data, with an actual concept to others who have absolutely no idea what you're doing. Is it also true for startup founders?
Of course, it's true for startup founders, because equally they have this clash of they need to give data and they become data centric, but they forget that we don't remember data. We remember stories. You remember nighttime stories. You remember 1001 stories. What was it? The 1001 night stories. So you remember the essence of the story. He climbed 100 hills, and there were 7 apples, or this or the other. Those are the things you remember as far as they're within a storyline. If we connect them within a story, it becomes memorable.
For sure. Looks like it's the recipe for a successful elevator pitch. Let's continue a little bit with the myth surrounding the startups, because if anyone has ever done a search on Google about this expression, looks like there is a never-ending wisdom on what a startup is, what to do if you're a startup founder, and so much real talk about it. Ali, do you believe in horoscopes?
Do I believe in horoscopes?
What is your sign?
I'm Aquarius.
It tells a lot, okay?
Yeah.
Because as I read, startup advice is like a horoscope. If you read enough, something will sound right. Are we close to the reality?
Very much.
There we go, okay.
Yeah, because whatever you say, the opposite of it is true. Whatever you say, the opposite of it is true. And I've read absolutely, I was going to say everything. I've read a lot of books, and I can't say everything. I've read enough, and I was discussing something like that with another person. She was throwing quotes at me, and I thought, okay, I'll throw back the exact opposite quotes. It was like, you need to go alone. I'm like, you need to go with a team. You need to get this. You need to get that.
Wow. Sounds like a soap opera.
It is, because for every possibility or every situation, the exact opposite is true. The climbing of the Everest. Tell me one thing, climbing of Everest, can you do it without an oxygen mask?
I really doubt it, but I mean...
I love it. You see, there is one person who did it, and they told him you cannot do it. And because they told him you cannot do it, he went and he did it. So it is possible. It is possible. And there are a lot of things that will tell you that it's impossible, and everything is possible. The iPad became possible. The other one became possible. The Tesla became possibility, even though they told him impossible. My brother-in-law, I remember talking to my brother-in-law many years ago, just as the Tesla was about to start. And he ended up, I think his last position was vice president of Ford. So he was pretty high up, and he was very clued in the automobile industry. He never thought Tesla would be able to make it. But they did. They did. And a lot of the people in the mainstream industry think that the other is not a possibility. And all the advice really comes from people who are only experiencing one side. The software as a service. My very good billionaire friend.
Oh, you have billionaire friends. Success from another definition.
He could not understand the concept 10, 15 years ago when I suggested to him, look, software as a service will be mainstream. People will be paying like 10 euros, 15 euros, 5 euros per month for using different softwares. It was like, that's outrageous. Where are you going to make money from it? No, you need to sell it at, 10,000 euros for a startup and, setup fee and then 1,000 per month. And, you replace 1 or 2 employees. So that's a good saving. And he could not get the concept of software as a service. Small fees, recurring income for life or for the life of that business. So it always comes from the experience of the person who's giving you the advice. The opposite of it is true. Same as freemium. All the softwares that were free to use.
Yep.
Okay, Facebook, Google, they're all free, but their model is advertising and it works perfectly well.
This startup world sounds so juicy to me that I was thinking for another project for you in the near future, you should start a Netflix show on startup founders.
I like that.
Involve me, please. One of the most impressive books that I have ever read about startups, and I actually take it with me every time when I go for a business trip, I always recommend it to my students, is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. It's evergreen, and he, by the way, published the second volume of it. I'm not done with it yet, but it sounds really promising. And one of the misinterpreted expressions that most of the people cannot really explain properly is the unfair advantage. So every time we try to relate to it or try to explain, I get the most hilarious explanations what an unfair advantage could be. And just driving back to the startup approach, can you give us any example? What's your definition of an unfair? Why is it unfair?
It's called unfair because it is unfair. And I'll give you one very good example. If you're friends with Bill Gates and you have a software that can be incorporated into Windows, and Bill Gates allows you to incorporate it faster than anybody else because you're right next to him, you speak to him, and it passes all the loops, that's an unfair advantage. It is a very unfair advantage, but it is the unfair advantage. If, for example, you strike a deal with Coca-Cola, but you strike the deal with the Coca-Cola with hard work, and you get to an agreement with them that they promote alongside a bottle of Coke, also your snack or whatever, that's an unfair advantage because you're going out where Coca-Cola is going out or Pepsi-Cola is going out or whatever, where nobody else can go as fast as you. That is an unfair advantage. Unfair advantage, very often what people think and they come up with, which is wrong, is they say, oh, we're going to bundle this together with the other and put several things together. I'm like, there's no unfair advantage in that. You've just put a couple of things together yourself.
I always hear that it's being cheaper than the competitors every time. Most of the students come up with this, our unfair advantage that we're going to offer this product or service at a lower rate than the rivals. And then how is it not easily copyable? You know what I mean?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're digging your own grave by lowering your own price.
There we go. Unless you're Amazon. Have you noticed that technically the way you present yourself as a startup founder, it comes with a little bit of a cliche or even a little bit of a spice. You must wear something funky. As I see, you are fitting those boxes. Posing with an open MacBook on your side, walking around with a matcha latte or anything like that. Usually hanging out in Bali or a cheap co working space, but do not tell anyone. And technically, you're walking in slow mo on your Instagram stories, trying to sell one of the most ridiculously priced courses on how to change the life of other people. Can you relate to this image? And actually, how would you describe these days, even here in Marbella, because it is so multicultural, a typical startup founder, either true or not, but how do they appear?
I think most of the startup founders, again, they have an idea and they get eluded with the idea that they're going to raise money very fast, very easily. And it actually takes a lot of effort to raise money and to convince people. Maybe the first round, 3F might be easy, the fools and family and friends. But the second and the third round is where most of them stop and are unable to carry on further. And then they become stuck in that process of just continuous fundraising. And of course, instead of actually getting stuck in working in what they're talking about and doing what they're talking about, they spend their life in the fundraising round. They forget everything of the product, of the vision that they had. And that is the worst case scenario. I do see that quite a lot. And a lot of the times, actually, I read their pitch deck, I read their financial plans. They don't need that much money. Mm-hmm. They don't need that much money. The last one I reviewed, they were asking for £1.6 million. I worked with them. We brought it down to £315,000 from 1.6. We brought it down 350, and they have a very good model. They have a very good business model. They have a very good product. It's sellable. That's the difference between, what they were thinking they needed.
But were they wearing flip-flops? Back to the image.
Juno, actually, they were not working in what they should have been doing. They were engrossed in raising that 1.6 million.
I see.
It's irrelevant of the flip-flop or not, because these particular ones were wearing a suit and thinking by wearing the suit, they'll get the 1.6 million. But they never could get that 1.6 million until we went through why they're not getting the 1.6 million, why nobody is biting, and why the vanity metrics they had put all over the pitch deck was what was putting investors off, because every investor would then ask them, okay, how many clients do you have? Oh, we have hundreds. Right. How many are paying? Well, 10. Okay,
sounds
let's
like
start
a deal breaker.
We have 10 clients, 100 signups, and we're looking to convert in between now and X amount of time, another 10% or 20%. That at least is the reality. That at least is the truth. And now we can work on those numbers to build it up.
Let me just continue with a little bit more serious question. And because we're now living the age of the artificial intelligence, and almost every single post on social media is somehow generated by ChatGPT. When something starts with exciting news, we're diving into our next challenge to navigate the horizon, etc. For me, it's already a red flag. However, when it comes to business ideas, I was just wondering that the possible negative impacts on young people who want to be startup founders or just, creating a new business, can it have any negative feedback on them? If you read about this topic, there is even a subreddit that is called "Most AI Startups Are Doomed." What do you think about this?
Don't we say most startups are doomed? Does it make any difference if they have an AI or not? But yeah, of course, every other startup founder I meet has an AI something, and it is the hype. So I usually try to remove the AI from it, and I'm like, okay, what is the core fact or business that you're going for? And I don't see it as a problem, to be very honest. The industrial age replaced many, many people, people who had learned to trade and could do something with their hands, and they were completely replaced by machines. And again, we are replaced by machines for repetitive tasks.
For thinking, right?
Yeah, but now we can think. Now we can use it to our advantage to use that time to think. I'll give you two, three very good examples. Accountants employ people who've gone to university and studied accounting, and usually they have a team of accountants sitting there every month, day in, day out, typing in your invoices into the computers. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's brain numbing. That's horrible. That's the worst job I could ever think of.
I would kill myself.
Yeah, I would commit suicide even if they paid me 20,000 million trillion. I would commit suicide if I had to do that job. AI has replaced that job. All those people are now jobless. They have no jobs because what they had to do by hand, the invoice can be emailed, processed automatically, and one person can just verify if it's correct or not. Done in 10 minutes or in 1 hour. The job that was previously taking 6-7 employees, accountant, university degrees to do it. It is not required anymore. However, those people can become tax advisors. They can become financial advisors. They can actually advise a lot of other people or do things that they weren't doing before. And I bring from that to the startup that I had for a long time, the property management sector in Spain, which is the Administradores de Fincas. All they do is sit behind the computer and just do accounting for communities. All that needs to be replaced. And the administrator really, once all that is automated with AI, then they can really deal with the day-to-day problems that are happening within a community that the AI cannot fix.
That's so true. I was just thinking if it actually impacts you in a negative way, your creativity, your critical thinking, if automatically you're just, using everything related to AI when you're doing a product market fit, when you're trying to find an actual problem and a solution to it, when you're just creating a business plan. So do you think it has any impact on the way young people are creative?
It has. It has, and it has a positive impact. And it has a positive impact even on us because every day we're overloaded with more and more work. I think we're overloaded with everything. So AI actually reduces that workload. We can do it faster and achieve more if used properly. So I actually look at it as a very positive thing, and used properly, it can be to our advantage.
I have to agree with you. Well, after such serious topics, let me just navigate you to a little bit more, let's say, challenging part. And I prepared a couple of quick questions for you. So can you just respond either with one word or with a really, really short response? Are you ready?
Let's go.
If your life had a startup tagline, what would it be?
It'd be the same as my book, but instead of passion and vision for ingredients for a successful startup, it'd be passion and vision, ingredients for a successful life.
Original. What is that one thing AI will never replace in entrepreneurship?
Or in anyone, your soul.
What's the most overrated advice founders keep hearing?
You can't do it.
What's harder, pitching to investors or training a cat?
Training my wife.
That was not on the list. Have you ever had a 9-to-5 job? Be honest.
Never. I've had worse, an entrepreneur's job. It's a 9-to-9 job, 9 a.m. to 9 a.m.
If you had to start over your career with just one thing, what would it be?
My experience.
What is the worst thing that can happen to public speakers on stage?
Stepping on a stage while not having been to the bathroom before.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure to have this honest conversation with you. And the world of startups is definitely exponentially growing. And I'm very, very sure that whoever is going to watch this episode, they will learn so much and they will have fun. Thank you for coming and thank you for having this nice chat with me.
Thank you, Christina. And by the way, that happened to me.
I'm a selfish kind of person with a soul trying to fly. I aim to break the laws of nature and learn to love before I die.